Welcome to episode 58 of Tomes and Tunes. I am your host, Arielle Silver. I am a singer-songwriter, and I guess I do a few other things also, including host the show every week, Tomes and Tunes. This is a show where I talk about books with songwriters because I am just a nerd for both books and music, and I thought, well, a year ago, that sounded like a nice way to while away my stay-at-home quarantine. And it's been going strong every week, another guest. And so I'm going to introduce our guest for this week in just a moment. It's Ken Holme, just to give a little reveal there. And I want to let you know before we start that for those of you living here in Southern California, I am playing a show on July 16th in Ojai, and I would love to see you there. It's going to be both an in-person in the venue show at the Ojai Underground Exchange and also live streamed, both ticketed. So I'm very excited. It's a Women of Americana kind of showcase, and it's me and Pi Jacobs and Celia Chavez and Amanda Mosher, and I'm just really excited. We'll do it as an in the round sort of thing where each person will play a song and we'll tell stories, and I'm just expecting it to be a very heartwarming event. So if you're around, I would love to see you there. And then what else should I tell you? I'm sure other things will come to mind. But here we are Thursday, and we have Tomes and Tunes. And Ken Holme, he and I have been bumping into each other for years. And I think a better way to say it is that we bumped into each other for a couple of years, about a decade ago. And then I didn't see him for a while. I don't know where he was, but I was not really participating in the music world very much. I was diving into yoga and literary writing pretty seriously. And then during the time of COVID, as the sort of, kismet sort of stuff has happened, actually in 2021, I started going to some of these song circles that I realized were happening on Zoom late at night. Well, for the East Coasters late at night, but not so late at night here for the West Coasters. And there were just, not performance so much as just community gathering and kind of like sitting around a campfire and swapping songs. And I started bumping into Ken again, and he's just got, you'll see in a minute if you don't know him, he's got such a warm spirit. He's a great storyteller. He's got, some of his songs are just hilarious, and inevitably there's something very poignant and touching that comes up in his music. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk with Ken and to share that conversation live with you right now. So let me bring him on. Where are you, Ken? There you are. Hello.
I'm right there. How are you doing?
You're over there. Oh no, there.
Well, I don't know where I am either. I'm next to you on the ski. You're over there.
Yeah.
No wait. This thing is mirrored. So this is my left hand and it's on the right. I'm just happy to be here in one spot.
I'm so happy to be here with you and have the opportunity to just chit chat. Usually we're like in the chat box in Zoom, but I think years ago it was probably more like in the kitchen at Kulak's Woodshed or whatever that room is. I think of it as the kitchen because we're always cookies.
Well, it was a kitchen, it was a bar, it was a tune-up room. It was the office is where we hid the cash. It's where...
Oh, shoot. I didn't know about the cache.
It was hidden behind a hidden thing that hid... Yeah, nobody knew.
Don't tell us where it is.
There was a night... Paul didn't know it because I thought, let's see what happens when I move it. So...
that always goes over well.
I was sort of the stage manager for the open mic night for about 5 years. And then decided, I've taken enough abuse, I'm going home.
Yeah, well... So were you stage managing back then when I was coming around, like 2007, 8, maybe around that time?
I walked in there for the first time in 2006, I believe.
Okay.
And was pretty active doing that job for about 5 years, and then was in and out as a performer, but not as, after a while you go, I'd kind of like to be nervous when I go on instead of just sweating already. So I walked away from being the stage man. They also, I wanted away from the name they gave my job. I was the guy who hooked up the acoustic guitar. That's really what I said. Let's have somebody with two leads off stage so that while one person's unplugging, I can plug the other guy in, they can just enter. It saved like 30 seconds per setup times 37 performers.
At an open
So
mic, it's a lot.
there I am with my time-saving idea, and somebody cutely nicknamed my job Hooker. And I didn't want to grow up to be a hooker. Yeah, if the shoe fits, you take the name and run with it. But that's my name.
That's really
Ken the
funny
Hooker.
because usually the book part of the show kind of comes a little later, but I'm going to share a passage from Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. And
Okay.
I was debating, I'm not going to share it right at the moment, but I was debating which passage to share. And one of the passages is about like nicknames and names. It kind of like fits right in. So I don't know. I might go back to that passage. But 2007, Kulak's Woodshed. I had moved here from Boston. Actually, I want to give a shout out to the Deli House if there are any Bostonians here. I still have this shirt. I got it 1,000 years ago. It's from a little diner restaurant that was open. It was kind of like the rocker place to go in the middle of the night because it was like the one place besides maybe IHOP that was still open after the shows were done. But anyway, I moved here from Boston, and when I first got here, I was sort of expecting that I would just run into live music. Like I could just walk around somewhere, like you go to Harvard Square and you wander around. Eventually, it's not going to take you very long to either walk right into a street performer or find your way to, at the time, Club Passim, or if you're walking down the street, Toad or the Lizard Lounge or the Cantab or the Kendall
Right.
Cafe. Like it was music everywhere. But Los Angeles is really sprawling, and so it took me a while to learn about Kulak's. It was like, where are the songwriters hanging out? And so that was when I found that place, and that was where you were hanging out.
Yeah.
And a lot of other songwriters.
I went there for a similar reason, because it's like, oh, you can go there? Well, they'll know where other gigs are. Because I was just looking for, in this sprawling, I was from San Bernardino County, where I knew everywhere where gigs were, but I wanted some in LA. And I went there literally just to learn out where the other gigs were, and 5 years later I left and pursued that. But, I got really wound up in the scene at the Shed for about 5 years, and was there 5 nights a week sometimes.
Wow.
And my wife said, maybe too much. And I go,
Maybe
okay.
too much. Well, the way that Kulak's was set up was there was a bed. You could take a little nap if you wanted to. Of course, you knew where the cash drawer was. I didn't.
Yes,
but there were cookies in the kitchen, and, you could try out 1,000 different types of seats, chairs, all different sorts of things. And then there's the 5-camera shoot on the ceiling that's always moving, and that piano if you want to sit down, a little drum
Remember
kit.
the one along the ceiling that was on an upside-down skateboard?
Yes.
All built? Yeah.
Yes. Is that not there anymore?
I think all of that's still there, actually,
Okay.
but they have better cameras hung from these homemade devices.
Yeah.
Well, I forgot it was there one night, and I was going to photograph Barrington Van Campen one night with the B-Tunes, and I got up on a chair to get the angle I wanted, and all of a sudden, pow, right in the back of my head. The camera hit me, and Barrington saw it, and I think there's videotape of him trying hard not to laugh, because it was apparently right out of a Keystone Cops movie. Little slapstick. Kenny got hit by a moving object in the back of the head.
Well, music is like a full contact sport. People don't talk about this aspect of it, but like I said before to you a few minutes ago, I bonked my head pretty hard on my guitar yesterday, I think. And I'm like,
Really?
Man, it's still bruised
taking it off? You just,
I think so, yeah. It was,
You've given up swinging it around the room like that. But, no, you're just taking it off.
It was just the innocent taking the guitar off and, got the edge, man. Full contact.
Yeah, I've
Blood sport.
yeah, if you, I've learned to keep those little springy things at the end of the strings trimmed pretty tight.
Oh, yeah.
I've learned how to do it and not destroy the inside of the guitar case with the little pointy things. But it's just, there's a way to hurt yourself every few inches on a musical instrument if you really want to work it right.
I mean, clarinet reeds. You know, you get a splinter in your tongue. It's like, what?
Yeah. And you tell, it's right in the middle of someone actually, the hours and hours of practicing alone. Nobody sees you, you do things, who cares? The
Yeah.
one time you do stab yourself in the tongue with your reed, you're playing for someone.
Yeah,
And
right.
so it causes the wonderful squeak
Oh,
that goes to Benny Goodman makes you go, and then they watch you.
oh
So yeah,
man. See,
I
you
know
know.
this from saxophone because
Oh,
they're not
you're a
bent
sax
enough. The
player.
clarinets aren't bent enough for me. So
Yeah, well, you got to get the bass clarinet, all that
I've
stuff.
seen one.
Yeah.
It, I think
You're
there's
like, what's wrong with the saxophone?
yeah. No,
It's the wrong color. It's the wrong shape.
well, I've clarinet used to be the same instrument in the social strata during the swing era. Jimi Hendrix was a clarinet player.
Yeah, yeah, totally. The
It
rock
just like, or
stars, like
Clapton, the rock star, were the
yeah.
guys with the clarinets. And if you've seen the jazz series on PBS, those are the most fun episodes. The swing ones are kind of uplifting. It's the depression, but we're being happy. We're playing swing music, and you get to learn how. I mean, 30 years before that, it was the banjo. I don't think so. The banjo and the trumpet were the lead instruments.
Wow, I
The,
feel like
the
we need to get Ken Burns on this show and
oh,
just
please do. I'll
we should.
watch that one.
I know it. I love
Read a
his
script, Ken. Just read a script, and you can have a retrospective later of Ken's, and I'll be at the end.
Oh, Ken and Ken. Ooh.
Ken,
This is
at least three.
ooh, you could do something where like Ken interviews Ken and just select Kens as your guests. That's a
Yes.
theme right there.
I'll call Ken Burns' office. It'll be the shortest phone call in history.
Hello?
Like
No.
to talk to Mr. Burns? No, you don't. Click. So,
All right, so
yeah.
Ken, so
What?
you and I were talking before the show about how during COVID, you and a group of musicians came together, and in fact, here comes John Zipper chiming in right now. You and a couple of musicians, a handful, I think 6, would meet
Yeah.
every Wednesday on Zoom, I guess, right?
Yeah,
And you would,
it's not
what
exactly
was
a state secret, but I nicknamed it mock gig.
mock
And because
gig?
we literally started out just pretending that 5 of us were the audience, and the victim on the chair with the guitar was the artist arriving. Has just you've been introduced. Your car broke down. You're arriving late. The stage manager has yanked you from backstage, put you in the chair, go. And that was the theory behind. We were just getting used to how well can you just warm up now. Figuring
Wow.
this would be a skill set that has to be built, and that's very true.
Yeah.
I still haven't mastered it, and we've been messing around with this since I think 2016, on and
Oh,
off. We took some time off in the middle, but
yeah.
when we were doing this live in living rooms, COVID came and made us resort to this thing called Zoom,
I've
which
heard
at
of
one
it.
point I knew nothing of it. That time it was my cat's name, not this service on the computer.
Right.
And now I am so used to Zoom, I'm thinking of adopting it as part of my family. It's just, how often can you, it's just, what are you doing today? I don't have a Zoom meeting. Let's go walk around the yard.
I don't
'Cause
know why
that's-
it took so long, but yesterday someone and I missed each other on a Zoom call. We were like an hour off time zones and everything.
well,
And
that's an easy thing to do.
he wrote to me and he said, I hope to see you Zoom. I hope to see you soon, but I hope to see you Zoom. And I was like, how did that take like more than a year for me to hear someone make that play?
Oh, because it's such a horrible pun that we're waiting for the right moment. Yeah, that is a horrible pun, but I'll use it
Yeah, I know. We're both
because
going to use it.
I've had the shots. I'm immune. So
So,
um,
so you guys would meet on Zoom, and did you continue with this like, like okay, you just got out of traffic and the car broke down and you're
oh no,
all. Did you continue with that theme?
we still sort of cling to that. Some nights in the morning when I'm still waking up, everyone else goes, "Let's play a song," and I'm going, "Are we here?" So, yeah, it's sort of become kind of a place to take new songs, because where else are you going to take a new song?
I know.
I have I think 6 songs that definitely fall in the comedy range that I've never heard anyone except Mock Gig laugh at, because sometimes they'll just leave their mics live. But at Fiddlers, I see mouths. I don't hear anybody. At Zoom meetings, you see them reacting to a funny thing, and you're going,
Yeah.
I want to be in the same room with that. I'm waiting so bad to play live somewhere, and my turn hasn't come yet. But I mean, at home, the cats are so tired of it, they don't laugh.
My cat actually runs out of the room if I
Oh,
start to sing. She doesn't
yeah.
mind if I play guitar, but as soon as I start to sing, she's not, she doesn't like it.
No, Zumba is afraid of the guitar. Mischief gets in the case. So yeah,
Of course.
the little one's the brave one. The big male cat, Marl, guitar, run out of the room. So he does that, and I have to find a place like that's. I have an office behind the garage, which is where I am now. The only solar powered room in the house, and not powered, heated, and no air conditioning because it makes noise. Anyway, Zoom doesn't tolerate. I think the high notes hurt his ears. The guitar harmonics hurt his ears. So he has asked me, feed me. He never gets around to asking me not to play the guitar. He just asks to be fed constantly. Feed me. That's your job. Feed me.
Is that his way of getting you to stop playing guitar?
It's one of them. He just goes and hides.
We-
When
We had we have one cat now. We had two cats. Scooter was Darby's cat. When we moved in together, I brought in Meow Meow and he brought in Scooter. And Meow Meow was not quite a kitten, but she was a young, little whippersnapper. And Scooter was, the big man on campus and pretty much done with the freshmen. And he started going deaf. And in fact, at some point, he was completely deaf. And at that point, Darby stopped vacuuming the house and started just vacuuming the cat. And just like getting to it at the source, because Scooter was no longer afraid of the vacuum cleaner. And Darby was like, well, it makes sense just to take care of the issue right here.
I salute the man's logic. That makes
Yeah.
sense now. And the thing is, some cats would actually kind of like the being brushed, and it was sort of would be attention and a little affection. And if they can't hear the screeching of Yoko in the machine, that would be good for the cat. Actually, the vacuum isn't Yoko. My tea kettle is Yoko, but that's a different story.
We have to name everything. We live in a world of nouns. They should be proper, right?
Yes, proper names. Yeah.
So you get. I want to go back to this idea of the six of you, or is it seven? Six of
It's
you?
actually, if you count split personalities, there's 12. But
12 of you.
There's 6 of us. There's 6 of us, and
6 squares on the Zoom
6
screen.
squares on the 6 rectangles actually. And
Okay, right.
and if you get desperately nerd-like about the definition, which I feel that's typecasting for me. 6 of us get together and use Zoom to test out new material and prepare for the other Zooms, rehearsing for
Right.
another Zoom at this Zoom, and that's been for me like a lifesaver, because for about 6 months it was the only playing I got to do in front of
Yeah.
other people or hearing other people play until
Yeah.
the streaming thing picked up some steam, and you have to schedule when you don't attend a streaming thing because there's so many.
Yeah, you could just
it-
hop from one to one.
Yeah, literally. And when your posterior falls asleep, you get up and walk around.
And then you can bring your phone with you for those mobile
Yes.
Zooms.
Yeah.
So for this song circle that you do, or this mock gig thing that you do you critique each other's work, or do you just serve as audience for each other to kind of feel
Yes
like
and
you're
no.
in the hot seat?
It started out with the idea of no critique, just let me do this. And eventually it got to the point where if you're feeling like you just don't want to critique, you just want to play it and watch your faces and let that be the only evidence. Because some mornings you've got something so new and delicate that you don't really have it ready to hear anything about how you did. You'll be enough of a judge that, I screwed that up.
Is it about the performance, or is it about the song?
It also, that's one reason it's sort of become if you say this is a new song, tell me what you think, you have to sort of pick and choose your moments. If you don't want to be, I'm just saying that the minute it went to Zoom, there was less structure, and it sort of could become something. And I'm not seeing any chat, so I'm thinking
That's
that's how I won't be distracted.
If
Look,
you click the there should be a comment button, not the private chat, but the comment button at the top there, and you'll
oh, there's
see.
people.
I know there's all kinds of people. Hi Peter, hi Tom, hi John, hi
Yes, hi,
Lee,
Ken Krupnick and John Zipper, yes.
Bonnie,
Uh, yes. And
Bev.
which, I'm trying to figure out which is recent and which is old.
At the bottom, the new ones
Okay,
come in on the bottom.
I feel better now. But
Yeah,
yeah,
there you go.
yeah, John's involved. I don't see any other names of this, but it's just the six of us, and all of our friends say, "I'd like to do that," and we say, "Well, I
Sorry,
have enough
closed door.
trouble getting two songs in 2 hours because
Yeah.
we talk and we do discuss and we do critique, and our record is 4 songs each, way at the beginning when we were live in the room. But that's as good as even when we're live in the room and keeping the chat down. But
Yeah.
there's something about 6 people that have been not talking to anybody all week.
Yeah.
All of a
Yeah.
sudden, we want to discuss things,
Yeah.
and sometimes the song you just played is it, and sometimes it devolves to my cat threw up.
Yeah.
Just everyday things.
Yeah.
So that's how that works.
Yeah. Well, same with my group. We meet every Monday and Friday, and we are. I don't know why I can't keep track of how many of us there are. I think it's 9 of us though. It's like just enough so that it's a little bit awkward when everybody's there. The odd number of rectangles in the rows.
Yes.
And it's not always all 9 of us. In fact, it's almost never all 9 of us, but it's usually at least 4 or 5. And some weeks, we have sort of an agenda. We're all musicians. We have a pretty interesting span of genres. We're not there are a couple that are sort of like me, more or less, singer-songwriters, but then, there's some other stuff as well, which is really interesting. And some weeks we kind of come in and we have an agenda and we're like, okay, let's just get to it. Boom, 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 and the hour's over and we're done. But a lot of weeks it's like the first half hour, we give ourselves an hour, and the first half hour sometimes is like, just talking about really important, interesting stuff, and then someone, of course, is always the gatekeeper, like, okay, we gotta get to our agenda.
Yeah.
But it's been so important during COVID to have
Yeah,
that
it's early
touchdown.
on. It was Wednesday was when I got to play for someone besides me and Bev
Yeah.
and the cats. So that was very much a lifesaver. And once we got past the third of the 2 months they said it would last, it was like, what are we doing? I'm so lonely. I was the introspective guy that when they announced the lockdown, I go, oh, good, I'll get something done.
Yeah.
I'm used to being alone. I like being alone. I schedule
Yeah.
alone time for myself. And then by about the 6 month mark, it was going, okay, I've had enough of this.
COVID turned you into an extrovert.
Yeah, an extroverted, grumpy old man. And it's go away, get off my lawn. Wait, go, get on my lawn. I have a song about a grumpy old man. I said, no, get on my lawn because COVID's been enough. I'm lonely now. Get off my lawn. But
Well, did you get some? I'm sorry. I'm just, there's so many questions. I'm so curious that I keep.
Choose one and ask it slowly, and I'll answer.
This will give you a clue as to why my grandfather, when I was little, he said, Arielle, actually, he probably said Ari, that's what they all call me, but let's have a few minutes of silent meditation. And I would just shut up because I didn't know what meditation meant. But
Yeah.
my question, though, going, again, is, so you were by yourself for a lot of these days, and then you would gather together with these songwriters. Did you find that you were able to write a lot this past year, or
Oh yeah, writing.
or
I write. There's a part of my, the inner monologue people that you don't tell anyone but you shrink about. There's a part of me that never shuts up. He's the one who writes the lyrics, and he's always rhyming something. Somebody will say something, and he'll rhyme something with Al. I've learned to tune him out, unless I'll write that one down. but that's literally my rough draft process. Is that guy gives me an idea, and he works for the muse, but my muse drinks, so he has an assistant, and she has an assistant. And anyway, that's the beginning of the writing process for me, and I have notebooks full of unfinished things, and every once in a while I'll read through and they go, that deserves finishing, and I'll sit down and finish it, and that's called homework, but
Right.
that's what we're doing.
So would you
homework
bring
to
your
come
new,
up.
would you write a new song? Would you bring a new song in every week to this group?
No, nothing so disciplined. But when somebody does that, I think Tracy Newman, I think, may be able to just bring in her backlog forever and call them new songs. She has a folder about this thick,
Yeah.
I think, hidden under the desk of songs that she wrote in her lifetime.
Yeah.
And because she has like 3 adult albums, not adult, but music for adults, and then 3 children's music albums out, and she's writing another one. Don't know which direction that will go. John is in the middle of putting together his next album. Craig Lincoln is the champion at finding new arrangements for covers, and he is forever saying, "See if you can figure out what this one is," and he'll play it on piano or guitar, and we'll wait for the chorus so we'll recognize it, because sometimes he goes, sometimes it's actually pretty close. Anyway, you need to go to their shows and find out when they finally get to do shows.
Yeah.
And and Art Podell is a font of Art knows. It's easier to ask Art who he doesn't know in show business, because he's been around since he was in the group Art and Paul before Simon and Garfunkel were Artie and Paul. They did a folk music album in 1960.
Yeah.
That was, I guess, they knew the song and performed the song "Puff the Magic Dragon" before Peter, Paul, and Mary did. So if you want to corner Art and ask him all sorts of questions about everything that ever happened, he knows the stories.
I would love
And
to
the
hear him
people.
play Puff the Magic Dragon. That was
I don't. He may not. He may have something else he wants to play. But yeah, he's got a very well. You heard him last night. He
he's
did
a beautiful songwriter.
I don't remember the title, but what he sang last night was, I had heard him do it before, but that time was great. But last night was just soulful.
Last night was magical. Yeah. Are you
yeah,
talking about this? Both songs actually that he played, but the first one was in Spanish. Is that the one that you're?
The one I asked him, I didn't understand any of that. Art.
Right.
What'd you say? And he
was
said, like,
beautiful.
I understood it. he didn't know what he was saying either. He's reading the cue card. So, no, it was especially the second one, which I think was a Randy Sparks song. But Art and Tracy were both in the original New Christie Minstrels for a time.
Yeah.
Art from the beginning, and Tracy was only an interim member, because I think she was actually not quite 21 yet, and you don't tour with an adult group of musicians if you have an under 21 in the crowd. So they had to say, sorry.
Huh.
So that's the story I've heard, and if it's a lie, then I'm sorry.
Well, there's fiction and there's nonfiction.
Yeah, that's true. And then there's science fiction. There can be folk music fiction.
Folk
Not as
music.
popular a genre, but they can happen.
Yeah, we'll start it right here. Okay, so, gosh, so many stories, and you're so fun to listen to. When we were in the green room, you started to tell me a story, and I said, no, wait, let's hear it on the
that
show.
one?
So you were holding up a book, and you were about to tell me a story.
This is MASH.
Yeah, MASH.
By one Richard Hooker. This is the book they turned the movie MASH and eventually the TV show MASH. Yeah. But in 1971, I was in high school and 17 and had gained some notoriety at school as part of the newspaper staff and a photographer. And that meant, I could check friends out of school and go, we're going to take his picture. And we'd go misbehave for a while, and I'd dump him back in the class. And I was not in trouble, but I'd misused, I guess I was in trouble. But Dad, who had pulled this same crap himself in high school, knew that I needed to learn that you can't do that unless you've earned the latitude to do that. Meaning your grades have to stay high and your behavior everywhere else has to be fairly exemplary, meaning you earn the brownie points before you misbehave, is literally how he put it when we finally had the conversation. But he snuck me into the conversation by giving me this book. He said, Kenny, there is a lesson for you in this book. And I had seen he had been reading it at Christmas time before. I think I even have a photo of him in a chair reading this book. And I said, a lesson? And he says, yes. I said, well, don't tell me, I'll find it. So I read the book, and I don't find a freaking message in there for me. A lot of stuff I loved because, you know, there's a 17-year-old dream of misbehavior on the front in Korea. You know, poker and showers and where you get to see hot lips naked and blah, 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 blah. The movie existed, but I hadn't seen it yet. And the TV show hadn't been even conceived yet when this happened. So I read the book, and Dad goes, well, you read the book. Get the message. No, don't tell me. I'll find it. And finally, I'm reading the first chapter. And I will have to squint, because did I bring my reading glasses? Of course not. There's a scene where Hawkeye and the character that's not in the TV show is named Duke Forrest, but this is the scene where Duke and Hawkeye meet. And Captain Pierce was 28 years old, slightly over 6 feet tall, and slightly stoop-shouldered. He wore glasses, and his brown blonde hair needed cutting. Captain Forrest was a year older, slightly under 6 feet tall, and more solid. He had a brush-cut red hair, pale blue eyes, and a nose that had not quite been restored to its natural shape and size after a contact with something more resistant than itself. "You the guy coming to the 407 7th?" Captain Pierce said to Captain Forrest. And they confronted each other and stood at the Jeep. "I believe so," Captain Forrest said. "Then get in," Captain Pierce said. "Who drives?" Captain Forrest says. "You choose," Captain Pierce said. He opened his barracks bag, felt around in it, and extracted a Stan Hack model Louisville Slugger. He handed the bat to Captain Forrest. "Toss," he said. Captain Forrest tossed the bat vertically into the air. As it came down, Captain Pierce expertly grabbed it at the tape with his left hand, which I can't do here because I'm holding it. Captain Pierce placed his right hand right above Captain Pierce's. Captain Pierce placed his right hand on the bat, and Captain Forrest was left with his right hand waving in the air with nothing left to grab. "Sorry," said Captain Pierce. "Always use your own bat." There I am. That was all he said. They got into the Jeep, and for the first 5 miles they did not speak again until Captain Forrest broke the silence. "What are y'all, anyway?" Captain Forrest asked. "A nut?" "That's likely," Captain Pierce said. "My name's Duke Forrest." "Who are y'all?" "I'm Hawkeye Pierce." "Hawkeye Pierce," Captain Forrest said. "What the hell kind of name is that?" "The only book that my old man ever read was The Last of the Mohicans," Captain Pierce explained. "Oh," Captain Pierce said. "Where y'all from?" "Crabapple Cove." "Where the hell is that?" "Maine," Hawkeye said. "Where are you from?" "Forest City." "Where the hell is that?" "Georgia," Duke said. "Jesus," Hawkeye said, "I need a drink." Duke said, "I got some." Duke reached into his bag, fished out a fifth, and said, Hawkeye said, "Did you make that yourself, or is it real?" "Where I come from, it's real if you make it yourself," Duke Forrest said, "but I bought this from the Yankee government." "Then I'll try it." Captain Pierce pulled to the side of the road and stopped the Jeep. Captain Forrest found the pint in his barracks bag and opened it. As they sat there, looking down at the road, flanked by the rice paddies skimmed low with November frost, they passed the bottle back and forth and talked. Duke Forrest learned that Hawkeye Pierce was married and the father of 2 young sons. Captain Pierce learned that Captain Forrest was married and the father of 2 young girls. They discovered that their training and experience had both been remarkably similar, and each detected, with much relief, that the other did not think of himself as a great surgeon. "Hawkeye," Captain Pierce said, "do y'all realize this is amazing?" "What's amazing?" "I mean, I come from Forest City, Georgia, and y'all are a Yankee from that Crabapple Cove in Maine, and we got so much in common." Hawkeye held up the bottle and said, "Duke, we haven't got as much of this in common as we used to." Hawkeye drove north, and then there's a long paragraph about him. They're passing the local whorehouse, which is on the only highway between Seoul and the front. "You need anything here?" Hawkeye said, noting Duke waving and nodding as the Jeep charged through the waving, cooing colorama. "No," Duke said. I shopped in Seoul last night, but something else bothers me now." "Doctor, you should be more careful." No, Duke said. We've been wondering about this Colonel Blake. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Barrymore Blake, Hawkeye said. I looked him up. Regular Army guy. Out of sight of the hookers now, Hawkeye pulled the Jeep up to the side of the road, and they continued drinking. By the time they had finished the bottle in the cold, the slanting rain had turned to wet flakes of snow. Duke was still repeating, regular Army guy? I mean, like Meade and Sherman and Grant? Well, the way I see it, though, is, Hawkeye continued, most of these regular Army types are insecure. If they weren't, they'd take their chances out in the big bad world, and their only security is based on the efficiency of their units. Right, said Duke. This Blake guy must have a problem or he wouldn't be sending for help, and maybe we're that help. Right, said Duke. So my idea, Hawkeye said, is that we work like hell when there's work and try to outclass the other talent. Right, said Duke. Then, this will give us the leverage to write our own tickets the rest of the way. Y'all know something, Hawkeye? You're a good man. And that was the hidden message. My dad just wanted me to know that. Read the book twice before I actually knew it. But that's the message my dad had, is that you work your butt off, so when you go off and do something creative, they can't really spank your ass because you have something to do over here they actually need. And so I've tried to live up to that, and did for 16 years as a clerk for a corporate bank. And yeah, talk about a place I didn't belong, but I at least managed to entrench myself to where I could mistreat them as much as they mistreated me. So anyway, this was the beginning of, I soon saw the movie, fell in love with that, and was at my desk writing the pilot to the TV show that really should exist. And this is September of '72 when this happened. And my brother comes in, goes, Kenny? What? I'm working. Kenny, guess who's the star of the new show on CBS called MASH? I was just crestfallen. I wanted to cry because I didn't get to write but eventually I did. But the season they finally canceled themselves, when they announced that, I had just finished a script for that show. And it wasn't a good script. I read it recently, and like every other page just sucks air, and the rest of them are passable. But it's my favorite scene, it turns out, I had stolen from another episode, and I just psychologically blocked that I had plagiarized.
Wait, so did you write for MASH for the TV show?
Oh, hell no. I tried to.
You tried to?
In 1980, 81, 82, everyone in Los Angeles that dreamt of being a screenwriter had a MASH script in his trunk in case they ran into the writers or the producers or Alan Alda. And literally the day after I finished this script, my friend Chuck and I went to a writers' symposium in Los Angeles, and one of the planned speakers were two writers from MASH. And we ended up talking to them, having lunch with them in the lobby right after they did their symposium. And Mr. Koenig was one of the two writers. He eventually was a producer. And he said, I have a question for you two. And we said, what? This is right after Chuck had reached into this big bag. Grapes were on special. And so Chuck had remember the old real big paper grocery bags? Yeah. It was full. It was full of grapes. It was like he had bought 3 pounds of green grapes, big grapes. And so they said, we're having lunch, and Chuck goes, want a grape? And they just took a big bunch, and they were happy. And they said, why is it everyone else here has quietly taken us aside and saying, can you read my MASH script? And you two haven't. Why is that? And Chuck says, he has a MASH script. And they turn and look at me, and I go, I don't feel paying $57 to attend this event gives me the right to bother you with that particular question. And they said, thank you. They didn't ask to read the script, but what the hell, I got a compliment from, one of the writers from MASH. So that was a long time ago.
Well, you got very close.
Damn close, but with a flawed attempt. But I mean, it's one of those things where I even went so far as I got halfway through the first act and realized it was twice as long as it needed to be. Yeah. So I just wrote Act 2, the midway point, kept writing. And so I'd written an hour-long episode, which would be more money if they took it, but also reduce the need for it by like 6,000%. It was a learning experience.
Yes. Yeah.
And I wish I still had the chair I wrote in, because it has a divot. A solid wooden chair with this worn spot from all the time I sat it. I wore out the platen on a new electric typewriter writing that particular thing. So, long time ago, and yeah, I still remained a big O fan. I was enough of a fan that I have all of the principals, Alan Alda, Loretta Swit, Mike Farrell's, and I think Larry Linville's autograph. I only got Alda's for myself. The other ones friends got and gave to me because they met these people and said, I have a friend who's the biggest MASH fan in the world. And so I was literally a little too fond of the show, and recently figured out that it's partly because my dad died young, and I was forever trying to garner his approval and attention and notice. So I just took this clue from him and ran with it like it was a football, and the goalposts were that way. And yeah, and so after he didn't understand how much I liked the show either. As a matter of fact, he thought the reason I liked the Marx Brothers was that Hawkeye and Trapper impersonated the Marx Brothers in one episode. He didn't know his son very well. I already knew about the Marx Brothers. But that's ancient history and maybe fodder for my shrink. But we'll see what happens.
Wow, that's a great story, though. And you know, it's funny. I think about this a lot. How we like kind of get a vision and set a goal and do the work, and there are two things kind of happening. One is that we might be getting closer and eventually, you know, to that goal that we're reaching for, or we might just be getting a lot better at this thing that we're doing. Like, for example, you know, if you had, I mean, you spent all that time working on those scripts for MASH. I imagine that, I don't know if that was the first major piece of writing that you did, but I imagine that it was a really big learning experience about how to write a TV script.
I went from a 5-page short story in school and songs that seldom went beyond 3 pages to writing an 80-page TV script. And it was sort of like, I want to do this so bad. I'm not using logic as any of my process. I'm just writing a damn script. And of course, there were scenes where I left, you know, you got injured soldiers in the post-op, so one of them became my friend Steve, and one of them became my friend Mac, and that's just how things went. And I knew they'd get the names changed right away, because I already knew that. They take an outside script. The first thing they did with it is just change all the names the writer used, in case there was a lawsuit in their future. So,
did you
can't use my name without, if in case it's a recognizable name, they just change them out of
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. It's a sort of very cautious thing that 20th Century Fox was probably more interested than the actual producers of MASH were. But if the Deep Pockets go, don't use any names we can't verify. Make sure they're fictional.
Well, did you then did you write more scripts? Were you more of a MASH fan than you were a writing TV script fan, or did you?
At that point, I think that's exactly it. I have a folder just full of somewhere between sketches and movies and things. Just I only when I don't have an outlet for them do I write like that. The times that I've been involved with improvisational comedy people or involved in a show where there were comedy segments to do, it's luckily the people around me had sketch ideas, or we would have nothing. It should be, all music. And now a comedy festival with just musical guests. That's not a good idea. So yeah, I wonder why I didn't ever go back to that full time. But I discovered in a pile a box that I don't think I'd opened since I moved here 23 years ago, that has a few pages of probably the first thing I ever did with a writing program, a word processor.
Yeah.
I used to think I hated rewriting things. Then I discovered, no, I just hate typing, because I'll edit things to death now on a word processor.
Yeah.
But I started a Friends episode.
Oh, okay.
I'd sort of forgotten they'd already done a thing about Joey and Chandler getting ripped off. But I had another one where, there's the fire escape. They're constantly crawling up the fire escape, and, well, not constantly, but they did it at least 3 times. Somebody left and crawled up the fire escape to be funny or get to somebody they wanted to talk to. I figured, they've got to come back from that coffee house they practically live at and find their apartment cleaned out. And they do. They come back and the girl's place is all torn apart. And they go, oh my God, we've been robbed. And all of a sudden, Chandler and Joey look at each other like, look at, well, their place got into, ours is just right across the hall. And they start, but I think actually I did add, Joey goes, but we've already been hit once. They're not going to come back. And all of a sudden, Chandler goes, my knocky, and runs out of the room. And Joey says, his what? And that's the end of the cold open. And the idea is that the rest of the burglary was just an excuse to talk about Chandler has his baby blanket in his closet. And knocky is what my little sister called her security blanket when she was too young to remember. She doesn't remember ever using the word. We keep teasing her, you called your blanket a knocky. And she says, you're 35, shut up. So, yeah. But yeah, that was my big dive into I was in the middle of a corporate job I really, really wanted to try and find away from. And so at night you try turning on your word processor and making stuff up as you go along. And that's probably I got as far as the first act, and then something else distracted me, like band rehearsal or something. I unfortunately can't decide on what I want to do when I grow up, and I'm 66. So
happy birthday! I'm sorry I missed your birthday.
Oh well, it was a while back. There's one coming up too. They don't just let you stop at 65. You're out of warranty, but you have to keep aging. Oh, good! Get off my lawn. So that's how it works.
Oh man, that was great, Ken. Thank you for all of that. I'm gonna, I guess, share. Let's see where my finger falls for this this excerpt from Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. I do have my glasses.
Oh well, I don't. I'll just squint.
This is probably, let's see here. Goodness. Okay, so this is. So in 1955, a 14-year-old boy was killed. He was a black boy, and he was visiting relatives in Mississippi. He was not from that area, and his name is Emmett Till. And so at this point in the story, the characters, Guitar and Milkman are their names. They are they're young boys, and they're looking for a place to hang out and have a drink. And so they walk into Tommy's barber shop. And Railroad Tommy is one of the barbers. Shh, says Railroad Tommy, because they come in kind of noisy. Guitar turned around and motioned him to come in, but to be quiet. That's Milkman. They were listening to the radio and muttering and shaking their heads. It was some time before Milkman discovered what they had been so tense about. A young Negro boy had been found stomped to death in Sunflower County, Mississippi. There were no questions about who stomped him. His murderers had boasted freely, and there were no questions about the motive. The boy had whistled at some white woman, refused to deny he had slept with others, and was a Northerner visiting the South. His name was Till. Railroad Tommy was trying to keep the noise down so he could hear the last syllable of the newscaster's words. In a few seconds it was over, since the announcer had only a few speculations and even fewer facts. The minute he went on to another topic of news, the barbershop broke out into loud conversation. Railroad Tommy, the one who had tried to maintain silence, was completely silent now. He moved to his razor strop while Hospital Tommy tried to keep his customer in the chair. Porter, Guitar, Freddie the janitor, and 3 or 4 other men were exploding, shouting all over the room. Apart from Milkman, only Railroad Tommy and Empire State were quiet. Railroad Tommy because he was preoccupied with his razor, and Empire State because he was simple and probably mute, although nobody seemed sure about that. There was no question about him being simple. Milkman tried to focus on the crisscrossed conversations. It'll be in the morning paper. Maybe it will and maybe it won't, said Porter. It was on the radio, got to be in the paper, said Freddie. They don't put that kind of news in no white paper, not unless you raped somebody. What you bet? What you bet it'll be in there, said Freddie. Bet anything you can lose, Porter answered. You on for 5? Wait a minute, Porter shouted. Say where. What do you mean where? I got 5 says it'll be in the morning paper. On the sports page? Asked Hospital Tommy. Or the funny papers, said Nero Brown. No, man. Front page. I bet $5 on front page. What the fuck is the difference? Shouted Guitar. A kid is stomped and you standing around fussing about whether some cracker put it in the paper. He's stomped, ain't he? Dead, ain't he? 'Cause he whistled at some Scarlett O'Hara. What'd he do it for? Asked Freddie. He knew he was in Mississippi. What'd he think that was, Tom Sawyer land? So he whistled. So what? Guitar was steaming. He's supposed to die for that? He from the north, said Freddie, acting big down in Bilbo country. Who the hell he think he is? Thought he was a man, that's what, said Railroad Tommy. Well, he thought wrong, Freddie said. Ain't no black men in Bilbo country. The hell they ain't, said Guitar. Who? Said Freddie. Till. That's who. He dead. A dead man ain't no man. A dead man is a corpse, that's all. A corpse. I'll just leave it at that. I just love the way that she's writing about this event and the way that the characters come out and talk about it.
I was recognizing some of that. I used to volunteer at the Recording for the Blind and Dyslexic when they had a studio here in LA.
Oh.
They've all gone virtual, and there's nowhere on this property quiet enough for me to do a 2-hour-long recording of anything without lawn blowers. So I don't do that anymore. But when we were doing the studio setup, I did, I think, 3 chapters of that book, but not that one. It's weird. The names are all very familiar, but I did a different section of it. Well, of the same story, maybe the same characters, but it's rending stuff. I don't understand how one part of society decides to just make another part of society low enough that we can pick on them. We get to do that.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I always think back to in college I took Sociology 101 and I loved the intro class so much that I came home that holiday season and told my parents that I wanted to be a sociology major, and my dad was like, over my dead body. So I wasn't a soc major. I only went as far as that intro class. But one thing that always stuck out to me from that class was I just remember sitting there in the the lecture hall, one of those college kind of theater style rooms where all the seats are like stadium sitting with the rows, and down below is the chalkboard with all the layers of chalkboards that the professor can move around.
Right.
And I just place myself in that room and I just think about, we define who we are by who we're not. And how these kinds of actions that people take, just the unconscious violence and, bigotry, hatred sort of things, it's on this unconscious level, it's people trying to define who they are by who they're not and creating this, fortress around it and then standing at the top and shooting arrows or, hurling catapults down on these other people.
That's an interesting analogy. It's kind of like racism is the castle one guy gets to have so they can shoot down from there. It's I don't know, it's certainly a division that Americans have to deal with. I go to Europe every once in a while because my wife doesn't want me to stay home, and I don't sense any of that among the locals. I might among the people on the bus we're traveling with, the 32 other tourists, but it's not as prevalent. It's not as. I have friends from England that say that there are versions of it, but it's not necessarily black.
Yeah,
it's just economic. Of course, they have white
Irish.
people had. Well, there's Irish, and then there's among the Londoners. Less than 50 years ago, it was what kind of hat you're allowed to wear, because the rich guys get to wear a bowler and the other guys get to wear this nifty cap and you get to wear this thing, because it was literally a class system, not a caste system. They just pronounced it differently. And if you were a working guy, you were a working guy. There's nothing you can do about that. And at least here, if you work hard enough, you can learn what you need to learn to be the boss, or you can start a business, or which you can do in England. But there still was that system. I don't know how it is there now, because that's one place I've never been.
I do think that the particulars of how racism or xenophobia or whatever. The particulars are maybe particular to a specific place, but the general idea, I think, at least from what I've seen, exists everywhere. You know, the who is in and who is out, and who we define ourselves by, and the kind of violence that we eke out. You know, it's like
Yeah.
the details might change, but if you just kind of squint your eyes a little bit and you just sort of see it blurred over, it's exactly the same. And I think some societies deal better, you know, with it. You know, but yeah. But Toni Morrison, I've been on a kick with her since the spring last year. I have finally gotten into her body of work, and you know, a lot of it has to do with how much mental capacity do I have at any given time? How much can I stay awake at the end of the day and read, and like what kind of, you know, what level of reading can I handle it at a particular time?
Some of her stuff, if you're fatigued, it's not easy to read aloud.
Right, yeah. It took me,
just,
Beloved took me a few times to get into, but it's a brilliant,
yeah.
brilliant book. Yeah. Well, on a less serious note, I think it might be time for music, Ken.
Yeah.
And you can play whatever you want, but Harold has to be in the song somewhere.
Okay. Okay. The rewrite wheels are spinning and going nowhere. No, I love this song. For Arielle, speaking of a song I wrote called Harold Who's Big. And if I were more technically adept, I would have queued up a picture of Harold to share, but I don't see that. Zoom has that where you can share the screen, but this StreamYard doesn't do that.
But it is on your website.
Yes, it is. You can go to my website, which is kenholme.com, and there's a whole section devoted to Harold Who Is Big. There are pictures of him as a kitten and as an adolescent and as an aging old man, and he died of a war wound when he was 9. So it'd be fun if he had lived to be 40, because he'd be turning. Oh, I forgot to unplug that. It'll only ring 3 more times, so let's 1.
I have
2.
a plane going overhead here right now, so
Oh, good.
this is just
it
like
shows a good moment. Yeah, a moment of silence for all the noise.
commercial break for humanity.
Shut the hell up, you're just a phone. Harold Who Is Big. I'll explain him in a minute. It's so hot in here. I think I'll play it slower. Harold Who Is Big is a kitty. Harold Who Is Big is a cat. Harold Who Is Big is a 20-pound mouser, but Harold Who Is Big isn't fat. Harold Who Is Big is a big bad cat. Hey, what do you think about that? Yeah, Harold Who Is Big has a big fuzzy body, but you'd never mistake him for a rat or a meatloaf. Harold Who Is Big thinks he's tiny. Harold Who Is Big is built like a tank. Harold Who Is Big is a lover, thank God, 'cause he's every kind of thing you can spank. Harold Who Is Big runs the alley. Harold Who Is Big is the Catland head. Regular-sized cats do what Big Harold says, or they just might end up dead. When Big Harold meows, you'd expect a big meow that might shake the house or the bed. But when Big Harold meows, he doesn't shake the ground, he just says meow instead. Ooh, that was a clam. The last note wasn't so good. Okay. That's Harold.
I love Harold.
So do we. He was a good guy. He let me use him as a pillow when it got cold. He was just this dense. He was not fat. He was 26 pounds of real honesty, solid cat.
So he didn't mind if you rested your head on him?
No, if it was cold, for one thing, I was a heat source.
Oh.
So, you know, to us, we're 98-degree heat pads because they're at 102 degrees. So it was a trade-off. My head got warm, he got warm. And if I turned, though, he'd wiggle out from underneath me and lecture me. But he'd run across the house we lived in at the time was about 100 years old and had one of those floors that was like a drum head. And I'd open the can of food, he'd be at the other end of the house, and he would thunder through the dining room and just boom, 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 boom. And then this big cat would come into the room and he'd look up at you and he'd say, in his language, feed me, which came out as and his little teeny meow. But big old cat. And he did purr, but you had to have your ear on his chest to hear it. He was so solidly built you didn't hear the purring. So
Did you ever have a cat? Did you ever have a cat that would get into mischief with the toilet paper roll? Was that ever an issue? Because that is just a new issue in our household, just within the past week or so. And so last night I remembered that it had been happening. It took me like 5 nights in a row to finally remember. But before I went to bed, I took the toilet paper roll off of the tube and set it on the counter. And I woke up this morning to find the toilet paper off of the counter and still like she had played with it.
They found it. Yes.
She found it.
They do. Once they decide to worship something, they're very, 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 very adamant that they get to do that.
So you've had this happen before
Oh
too?
yeah, as a matter of fact, I had 3 cats at that time, and there was the mom was named Gwendolyn, her daughter Genevieve was the one that I had a way to secure the toilet paper so she wouldn't pull it down, and that didn't work because she just shredded it. She was small enough, she had to actually reach up to do this, but yeah, they would. She was a toilet paper murdering cat.
Oh man.
She enjoyed her work.
Yeah, our cat is enjoying her work too. Ken, your stories about cats, I wonder if it would be fun for you. It would be fun for me. I don't know if it would be fun for you. It'd be fun for me to read your prose, to read short vignettes or stories, from a paragraph to a couple of pages long of like cat stories.
Yeah. I've had
or Herald stories anyway.
Herald stories. I have like 8 Herald stories, so you'll have to have me back to hear some of those because you have to sing now. That's the rule.
I know it is the rule.
And you're not going to sing the ghost song, are you? You're going to.
I'm not going to sing the ghost song. I mean, I could sing the ghost song, I guess.
Sing the ghost song, or I will say Neener. No, go sing what you want to sing. Just letting my inner 4-year-old make decisions for me now.
Well, I was thinking about I didn't know what song you were going to play today, what you would bring in, but I was thinking, it might be something rousing and, enthusiastic and humorous possibly.
And it was.
And it was, all those things. And so I was thinking that, perhaps I would juxtapose that with a quieter, finger-picked style folk song, not unlike Ghost Ships actually, but
okay.
The story behind this song is that there's an author by the name of Alexander Chee, and this is the only thing positive I have ever really gotten out of Twitter, which is that he posted on Twitter a few months ago, or maybe it wasn't that long ago, but anyway, he posted on Twitter that I think he had his palms read, or he went to a fortune teller or something like that. And the fortune teller said to him, there are 2 lines in this song, and I can't remember which one she said. She might have said, there's a difference between keeping something safe and helping it to grow. Not in those words, but those are the words that ended up in my song. It was something like that, and it caused me pause because I turned it over in my head for days, and I was trying to think of a song to write. I was working on a song and trying to think of an idea, and when I saw this tweet, I was like, I think I can work that in to this song that I'm trying to write about the prom. About a prom dress. I was trying to use that as a prompt, and I was imagining my old town in Florida, where I lived in 12th grade, and there was a river that went through the town, and there was a dock at the river. And this was the sort of dock where people came before the prom, all dressed up to the nines with their dates and their flowers, their corsages, and the parents would take their photographs. But it was also the place where people would come before a wedding, and all dressed up to the nines with their flowers and the photographer, and then it was also perhaps a place where people might come with a baby carriage, or grandparents might come with several generations below them. And I was just thinking about this this dock. The River Dock at Sunset is the name of the song. I was thinking about this river dock, and so this is the song that came out of it. Let me just turn that up a little bit. And I haven't played it much recently, and so I wanted to play it today because I'm trying to get it back under my fingers and in my head. So, River Dock at Sunset. Let's see here. On the river dock at sunset, beneath a crayon box of sky, last moments being supervised, cameras pinned us down like butterflies. We clipped flowers onto dresses, coupled off against the chill, cusp of honeysuckle summer evening, and every word we spoke full of meaning. On the river dock at sunset, the ones who taught us how to stand, reminiscing over rubber-soled shoes, wondering how we got to heels and hairdos. And constellations turn above the river that keeps flowing by. Time on earth keeps slipping by. There's a difference between keeping something safe and helping it to grow. On the river dock at sunset, through the lens of passing years, half between leaving and lingering, we try to learn how to love without worrying. And constellations turn above the river that keeps flowing by. Time on earth keeps slipping by. There's a difference between keeping something safe and helping it to grow. On the river dock at sunset, along the worn and weathered boards, nothing's meant to stay, but still letting go is the hardest drill. And constellations turn above the river that keeps flowing by. Time on earth keeps slipping by. There's a difference between keeping something safe and helping it to grow. Moments like the waves of the watershed, on the river dock at sunset. On the river dock at sunset.
I like that. I went to write down one pair of lines that was an interesting juxtaposition to me, and I didn't want to forget it. And the next line you did blew it clear out of my memory. So I'm going to have to hear the song again. Not right now.
I'll have to play it again then. Maybe I'll play it next week for the song circle.
Okay, that would be invited. That was a good one.
Yeah.
I like that one as much as I like the ghost
Oh,
song.
thank you.
The
Thank
Ghost
you.
Ship is what it's called?
It's called Ghost Ships.
Okay, because
Yeah.
see, last night I had like one word I could store.
I know it. I know it.
Ghost.
Well, actually, I played it 2 nights ago, so like that was even further back in history. It's hard to
Yeah.
access that
I
information.
don't remember that well. Are my shoes tied? Anyway.
You know what's funny is that in the last month, so yesterday was the last day of June, and
Right.
I was recollecting over the last couple of days all of the people that I saw in 3 dimensions in real life in the month of June, because of course it greatly, vastly outnumbered the number of people I had seen in the 15
too
months
deep.
prior.
Right. Yeah.
And I have a little cold now. And I'm like, wow, I had not gotten sick, all of last year, and now I have a little cold, and I'm like, oh, no wonder. This is the price you pay for being social. That is all to say that I also am remembering that when I have like that cold feeling in the head, my memory is just out the window. I can't remember words. I can't remember
Room that you
songs.
need for processing. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's buffering your brain, and you can't do anything.
That's exactly right.
I have a question that you may not even have an answer for, so it doesn't
Yeah.
even have to be answered here. But I listen to you, and I go, I know that I hear a such and so and so influence, and they go, no, you don't. That's actually, and I can't pin it down. There's somebody I think I have heard that reminds me of you, is the most, that holds the most water. I can't say,
Yeah.
that would be like saying, you sound like Dylan. Well, she's not mumbling, shut up. So yeah, so sometime if we have a moment and you have an answer, let me know who your influences were, because I don't sound a bit like any of my influences at all.
Yeah.
I know who my writing influences are, and my singing influences do not show up.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, for years, I've gotten, people say to me, oh, you remind me of so-and-so or this other person or the other person. And, I would say at least quarters of the time, I don't even know who that artist is. And so then after I talk with, this person and they tell me I sound just like this other vocalist, I then, go research who is that person and what's their music sound like. So I don't know.
well, as I said, if it requires thought, don't try and do that now,
Yeah.
because in this heat we'll faint from overusing
I know
our
it.
brains.
We'll just like short out, right?
For those of you watching at home, you don't have to turn off your air conditioners because you don't have a live mic on in the room.
Well-
There's a thermometer right outside that door, and it says 96 right now, but that's in here. It says subtropical 88.
Well, Ken, thank you so much for, you don't look wilted at all, but thank you so much for braving the blustering heat of the solar
Yeah.
heated office
fun.
behind the garage. And
Yeah.
this was really fun to talk with you. And here comes a plane, so this is
Yes, I know. You
perfect
must be
time.
near an airport.
I am Burbank. Hi, Burbank.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I just want to ask, do you have any live streaming events or in-person events that you would like to share with our listeners,
I wish
our
I
watchers?
did.
Okay.
I am at.
You're doing all the behind the scenes stuff, the song circles and all that stuff,
Yeah,
but those are
I-
not ticketed events.
But I don't have a gig in sight yet.
Yeah.
I'm at the closest thing I got is saying I attend the open mic night at Fiddler's Crossing live online,
Yeah.
which you can sign up to be an audience member. You don't have to
Oh,
play.
yeah,
You can
yeah.
just lurk in the corner and
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah, so I guess if folks are interested in that, they can go to Fiddler's Crossing.
Yeah, you hear some cool people.
Gosh, I wasn't even thinking about the folks that come just to listen because I should maybe polish up my act a little bit. Last night especially, I was just like, I'm too tired to play. Okay, so we'll see you at Fiddler's Crossing, and I will see you
Yes.
behind the scenes. And thank you, Ken,
Yeah.
so much. I have one more question. Do you have music out there in the world that people can get a hold of? Harold the Cat, for example, or anything else?
Oddly enough, I had the whole pandemic to take care of that, and I haven't yet.
Okay.
It's just I'm working on it.
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you the opportunity to promote it if
Okay.
you had it. Yeah.
That
All right,
sounds like
cool.
a plan.
Yeah. All right. I'll see you backstage and I will say hi and bye to all of you. Thank you for listening to this conversation. He is so fun. I don't know. These shows are fun for me. I hope they're fun for you watching. Next week, I have episode 59, and Shane Alexander, who produced my record that came out exactly a year ago like a year and 5 days ago, this album came out. Shane was the producer. He's also a beautiful songwriter, singer-songwriter, and he's going to be my guest. So I hope that you will tune in for that. And I just want to let you know that little ticker bar that's scrolling at the bottom, you can find out information about my shows and the Ojai show on July 16th, an upcoming show at Hotel Cafe at the beginning of August. I would love to see you locals, LA people there. And also, if you want to support the show, I have a Patreon, and there's a tip jar and all that stuff, no pressure. But if you are feeling a little, what is the word I'm looking for? I was going to say lush, but I don't think that's the word. Flush? Is that the word? Hi, you'd think that with this show, Tomes and Tunes, that I would have a handle on language, but I do not. In any case, there's all kinds of information at that link, and I will be here next week for episode 59. So take good care until we see each other again. Be safe.